Everybody. I appreciate everybody for joining today. I know we had quite a few people reach out about the session, so I was excited that a lot of people wanted to jump on. So I know there's a slight delay, I think, with LinkedIn and YouTube. So we'll give everybody a second to join, but I really do appreciate everybody for coming. I didn't put a ton of slides together for the conversation, but really looking at the different certifications that are out there for OT and ICS cybersecurity. I think those are some of the more common questions that come up. Whether it's from folks that are already in the industry, or especially for folks that are trying to get into the field and looking to make that move into OT cybersecurity. And so that's really, yeah, I look to certifications as a way to help people make that transition. So it's always to, kind of, if anything, to get that foot in the door. If you've been in OT or ICS cybersecurity for a while, certifications might not be on your radar. You might have clients though that require them, so there could be some requirements. That's one of the reasons why I have them and maintain them. So, hi Elton, thanks for coming. Crypto King, good to see you. Pawan, thanks for coming. So, a bunch of folks over on YouTube. So it's good to see everybody over there. So, I appreciate everybody for jumping on. So. So I'm going to go ahead and share out my screen kind of as folks are joining, because I did want to talk about real quickly. Always uh, go. So hopefully you can see that, and then I lose, of course, um, the chat. Let me see if I can go back. Uh, there. Okay, now I can see everything. uh, Welcome, welcome. All I see is LinkedIn user, so I don't know who that is. But I appreciate you for jumping in. So I did want to mention SecOT Plus first before we get into the two main, I guess, paths that we have for OT or ICS cybersecurity certifications. Now, when you look at and we're going to talk about the ISA and the SANS routes in a few. Both of those are take considerable resources. Um, some more than others. So, but I'm really excited about CompTIA announcing SecOT Plus. They're actually literally meeting this week to actually work on building the certification and the exam, which is really exciting. So everybody, there's a good group that got together in Chicago at CompTIA headquarters, and they're working on building that right now. So again, I'm really excited. I think this is a great transition, especially for folks coming from an IT cybersecurity background that are probably already familiar with CompTIA certifications. It's a real good fit. It'll be very cost effective as well, because I think it's only a couple hundred US dollars to take the exam. Hopefully, there'll be a great study guide. I'm looking at writing one. I'm really excited to be able to teach content around SecOT Plus. That's actually why I'm not in Chicago this week. Originally, I was going to be there and help develop the exam and everything, and then you actually have to sign an agreement to say that you'll never actually teach anything related to, in this case, SecOT Plus. And I was like, no, I can't do that. And they understood. So, but there's definitely a lot of great folks there this week. I have really high hopes for the certification. So it's looking like it'll probably be July-ish next year when it actually comes out in probably the beta format, and then probably the full version probably by the very end of next year, or probably January, February of 2027. So we still have a ways to wait for SecOT Plus, but I'm really excited that it is finally on its way. And yeah, I think it'll be a great way, especially again for folks from IT cybersecurity, to show. And this is why I focus on certifications. It's really a way to show at least a base level of knowledge, and at least your passion for that knowledge in the field. Because if you go and get certified, well, what about the other people that didn't get certified, right? So I really do think it helps demonstrate not only knowledge but that passion, and then hopefully that allows you to get that. If you're looking for your very first role in OT, it helps you get that first job, and then that's where you start to build experience. And I think that's really one of the big positives that comes out of the CompTIA certifications, whether it's A plus or Security plus or Network plus is another great one. Any of them really help people kind of get and move into that role. So yeah, so I'm really excited. So hey, Jared, thanks for coming. Subair, Bahindra, hope I didn't butcher that. Sullivan, Khan, welcome, welcome. And then Kintate. Hopefully I didn't butcher that too bad. So I appreciate everybody for coming. So yeah, so I'm really excited about SecOT Plus. So definitely keep an eye out on that. Again, it's just going to be mid next year, or probably later in the year, before we actually see the beta. But definitely very affordable, I think, relatively speaking, compared to the other ones that we're going to talk about, which really is probably the biggest drawback, honestly, when we look at the other certifications. And so we're going to talk first about the ISA 62443/IEC 62443 line. And this one typically tends to be seen as more affordable, as opposed to the SANS courses, and the three certifications that they have. Now they have additional ICS courses, um, and one doesn't have a certification, probably won't, at least for a very long time, and they just released their OTICS pen testing course, which I believe the idea is to have a test for that eventually. If I remember right, they have to run the courses like for a year or two before they can actually have an exam, and they just started that. The first class was in February at the SANS ICS Summit. So I'm kind of jumping ahead, so we'll come back to that. So again, there really are two kind of paths in OT ICS cybersecurity certifications today. There are a few other providers out there, which we'll talk about, that are mostly associated with the engineering world. Like I work, for those of you that don't know, I work at Fluor. We're one of the world's largest engineering companies. There's 7, 8 companies like Fluor, like we do. We build the world's largest industrial control in environments. And again, there's very few companies that do what we do. We have about 4,000 just electrical and control system engineers, not to mention all the other engineers, from safety and process, and the list goes on and on. But um, so there are some certifications associated more with the engineering world. So coming from basically companies with the engineering backgrounds, like Exida and TÜV out of Germany. So I don't have any, I haven't taken any of those courses or those exams. From what I've heard, it sounds like they're somewhat similar to ISA, IEC 62443 courses and exams. So they're um, you kind of, I would say, light on content as compared to Sans. So, but I think the nice thing, and I think a lot of people will gravitate towards ISA IEC 62443 series for a couple of reasons. One is it is much more affordable compared to Sans, right? And I think that's something that that nobody can argue with. I think it's, if you take a SANS course and the exam, it's about, I think, almost 11,000 US dollars right now, which is just, that's a lot. Um, the entire series for ISA for 62443 is, if I'm doing the math in my head, somewhere, I think, around, let's say, $7,000 for all four of those. Now, there's a couple of differences. So one is when you look at um, ISA for those certification exams, you have to take their course before you take the exam. So you don't have a choice. With SANS, you can actually go and just pay for the exam. And there are quite a few people that do that with the entry level cert, the GICSB, which we'll talk about. But, at the end of the day, you with 62443, you have to take the class, and you literally show up. They basically do roll call. They make sure you're in class and you're involved before they send you at the end of the class, basically the voucher and the instructions on how to register for the certification exam that goes with that course. Um, so I don't necessarily like the fact that they force you to take the class. It kind of comes across as, marketing. Um, the classes themselves, I would say, are written by engineers for engineers. The courses themselves really are. It's half of each class is talks about 62443. And if you're not familiar with 62443, 62443 is the standard, we consider the gold standard on how to build a cybersecurity program for defending your OT, your ICS environment. So your power plant, your water treatment facility, your train network. So we use 62443 as that gold standard on how to do that, right? Which is great. Um, and so this is, again, some of the, I think, the benefits of 62443 certification is it is recognized in the field and it is internationally recognized, especially for shops that look towards 62443 as the basis of their OT cybersecurity program. Right, so that's one of the big positives. I think this is why, when somebody asks me, well, which certification should I start with? I always typically will direct them to that very first exam, the cybersecurity fundamentals specialist, because right now it's the one test or and course that helps you understand. Again, each of these courses about half talking about 62443, the other half they talk about IT cybersecurity fundamentals and how they apply to OT ICS. So if you're coming from an IT cybersecurity background, you can ace half of these tests right away. Um, just just to put that out there. If you're coming from more of an OT engineering background, then and if you're not familiar with those concepts, then you'll definitely have to take a little bit more time. But I wouldn't consider any of these courses or certifications hard or 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 difficult. So let me pause there for a minute and look at some of the questions. So if you have questions as we go along, definitely feel free to drop them in the chat and we'll make sure we get to them. Yeah, how does SANS justify the huge cost? That's that's up to them. I have a lot of friends at SANS and they're all great people. Most of the folks that work there as well probably might agree that the prices are a little high or a lot high, but at the same time they're trying to get the information out to the community, and this is the route that allows them to do that. So And that program was built by Mike Asante and still by Rob Lee and folks like Tim Conway uh, and Jeff Shearer, and the list goes on, and they're all, again, great people that really just want to help the community. Um, it just, yeah, SANS does charge a lot. I will say, in the respects that, Rob Lee's grid class, which we're going to talk about in a moment, it's worth it. It's worth every penny if you have that money. Um, I realize at the same time, not everybody in the world has those resources. So yeah, but yeah, that's definitely a common theme that comes up when we talk about certifications in ICS OT, right? So, and I think uh, I saw a question about the best bang for your buck from Patrick. Is, yeah, if you're looking at the most cost effective approach, SANS is probably not on your radar. So I hate to say. But again, we'll come back and talk a little bit more about that. Um, so Hypo is asking, is the ICS 300 from CISA a decent starter cert to get? Well, so one thing to think about. So CISA, or I should CISA in the United States, is our cybersecurity infrastructure body that tries to help protect the country from cyber attacks, whether in IT or OT. And they do have a lot of training for free online. Um, those don't actually have certifications, though, that go with them. You do get a certificate of completion to say you went through the course, but it's not an actual certification, right? You're not going and taking an exam to take the step to prove that you at least have that knowledge. Or some people might say, at least you're a really good test taker. I'll admit it, I'm a really good test taker. So yeah, so CISA has some great content that's out there, but there's not an associated certification. You just get certificates of completion to say you took the course. I'm not a big fan of certificates of completion, and I don't know how CISA does this, but a lot of courses, you just sign up and they give it to you. They don't actually make you prove that you were in the class, or that you were paying attention, or you were listening, or that you retained any of the material. So yeah, I'm not really a fan of certificates of completion, because they just don't really mean anything, and they're definitely not really going to mean anything for a hiring manager. I always kind of cringe when people put them on their resumes, which, like, I get you're trying to show you were taking steps, and I think that's awesome. But it there's really just not a lot of substance there. So definitely, again, great content. It's free to take as well. But again, a certificate of completion is very different from going and taking a test and earning that certification. So hopefully that it helps answer the question. So Patrick also mentioned, from an independent IT/OT consultant perspective, I find the pricing of some of the certifications very hard to justify unless it's a direct blocker from competing bids with clients. Yeah, and those some great points. So I think that's why I was mentioning and alluding to a little bit earlier was, especially for people that have been working in OT or ICS for years, and in cybersecurity, you probably will never go get certified. Um, I think certifications, especially in OT, ICS, cybersecurity, the two reasons normally people would get them is that you're trying to get a foot in the door somewhere, like you're trying to get into OT, ICS, cybersecurity. And so that's why something like CompTIA SecOT Plus, when it comes out next year, or the ISA 62443, the Cybersecurity Fundamental Specialist, right? That's a great way to show, hey, I have this basic level of knowledge. I'm passionate and interested in the field. Take a shot on me. And then the other is, you have clients that require it. So I work with some of the best engineering minds in the world, some of our clients, largest companies in the world, and some can actually require engineers that are going to work on like OT, ICS, cybersecurity on their projects to have, the complete series of 62443. So we'll use that as a segue, and then I'll come back to questions. But we look at, so we mentioned there's kind of the very first 62443 course and exam for the cybersecurity fundamental specialist. That's kind of like their version, I guess, of Security Plus, kind of. So it's very like high level, general fundamentals. It's only a 3-day course, if I remember. And so, right, there's only so much you can cover in 3 days. And again, about half of that is dedicated to the 62443 standard, and the other is to cybersecurity fundamentals. Now, a big part of 62443 is understanding risk. So you can see that second course and exam is the risk assessment specialist. So it's all about really understanding risk, right? How do we conduct risk assessments based on 62443? Because so much of a 62443 program is built around that risk assessment process, right? Conducting those assessments, understanding where our risks are, and then understanding based off of the company's risk tolerance, how are we going to address those risks if we're going to address them at all. That's a big part of what they talk about there. The third one you can see is the design specialist. So you think, I always go back to, the most important control we can have in OT or ICS environments is secure network architecture, right? We have a firewall between IT and OT. We do additional segmentation within the OT network. And 62443 defines, if you've heard of terms like zones and conduits, how we break down further the OT network into zones and filter between those. And then the conduits that represents the communication between the assets in those different zones that we have. So of a facility. In this case, we're really talking about, oops, I think my microphone just dropped out. Hold on a sec. It might sound a little different or a little weird, but hopefully, can everybody still hear me okay? If you can give me a thumbs up or just put in the chat if you can still hear me. So it does look like, where they talk about, I just want to make sure everybody can hear me. I'll keep talking. I know there's still a delay, but let me know in the chat. I would appreciate it. So there is that O&M work, right? And I think also there's this focus, and I learned this from ISO 27001. So for those of you from the IT world, the IT cybersecurity world, there's a big focus on using ISO 27001 to build our cybersecurity program. Thanks for letting me know, Mal. And one of the things that I think a lot of people miss about ISO 27001, which you also don't see carried over to 62443, is the fact that you should always constantly be improving your program. And I've seen this in IT and I've seen this in OT, where you might do an assessment and you get a kind of a to-do list of things to address, and you might do something about those, and you might not do something about those, and then people just forget about the list altogether, and they don't think about continuing to improve the program. So I think that's highlighted maybe a little bit there. I wish it was more, but those are kind of the way I look at those courses. So you have to take the cybersecurity fundamental specialist course first, and then you can take the other three in any order you want. So um, here, we'll do that. I don't know. There's hopefully the echo will go away. I'm not sure what's going to be causing that, but um, so I'm just on the other microphone. So again, it'll probably sound weird, but hopefully that'll kill the echo. So you have to Then if you take all 4 courses and exams, because remember, you have to take the courses to take the exams, then you become the ISA IEC 62443 cybersecurity expert. I just posted on this the other day. I absolutely hate this title. Because remember, the idea is that these 4 exams and courses take, upwards of 10 days to take the courses and prepare for the exams. No one's going to be an expert in 2 weeks on anything. So I think it's a horrible, horrible name. I think the certifications overall are a great start, again, for either people that are moving into the field or folks from OT and engineering that need to learn the basics of cybersecurity and 62443, or also that you have a client that wants to, ensure at least have some sense that you know what you're talking about and by being certified. So, but yeah, those are the 62443 courses, and then again, how they build into that expert certification, which again, I just makes me want to throw up when I when I say it, because again, you're just not an expert. So let me go back to some of the questions. Um, so what about CISA? I think we talked already. Yeah, about 300, 400. They are great for learning, right? And especially if you go do in person, they do. You can even get real world hands-on experience, which is really exciting. I haven't been to take those. I need to do those. I was supposed to take them, and then COVID hit. So um, they sure can help you prepare for ISA and SANS. Honestly, again, the ISA, IEC 62443 courses are pretty easy. Um, so I don't I think for people that are looking at taking those exams, I actually started 62443 kind of study courses on YouTube. So you'll find those on the YouTube channel. I just have the first 2 parts that go with the cybersecurity fundamental specialist right now, but the idea is to continue releasing those. So and yeah, I think they would definitely help you with SANS. I think the more, especially like hands-on knowledge you have going into a SANS course, the better. Especially, I think if you're going to spend $10,000, $11,000 US on a course, you don't want to go into those courses unprepared. Um, so you really want to make sure at least you get as much knowledge as you can and experience if you're coming from the job to before you take a SANS course for sure. So Sullivan asked, yeah, how do these line up to Sec Plus and CISA Plus? Yeah, I think of Security Plus, like this, the cybersecurity fundamental specialist as kind of the OT version of Security Plus. So there is no equivalent for CISA Plus. CISA Plus is more for security analysts. So I always think of somebody sitting in a SOC. There is no equivalent for that in OT today. Maybe one day down the road. It would be years, honestly, down the road because there's just not a lot of content out there around SOCs and OT. Because guess what? There's not a lot of SOCs and OT. I hate to say it, but the vast majority of OT organizations are not monitoring their networks. They're not performing that type of monitoring. And they don't have a SIM. They're not bringing in events and correlating, looking at the big picture. So, unfortunately, right, that's changing slowly, but it's changing slowly. So, yeah. Yeah, so right now I think a fundamental specialist from 62443 as kind of the OT industry of kind of security plus for right now. And then don't forget, next year we'll see SecOT plus from CompTIA. So that would be it's going to be the OT version of security plus. So since price is somewhat prohibitive for a lot of these certifications, is there another way around us if one really wants to get into OT ICS? I hate to say it, but there's not as far as certifications. Again, at least CompTIA is coming out with SecOT Plus next year, which is going to be a couple hundred US dollars. So that's much more affordable than ISA or definitely SANS. I understand, depending on where people are in the world, that even that might make it unaffordable, but at least it's better. And it's, if you're looking at getting certified, those are the options today. I wish that, there was more, but that's kind of where we're at, right? Because, OT has existed, or ICS has existed for a very long time, but um, it's only been really the last couple of years where people have really taken notice and understood that it's important, right? We can look at Jaguar Land Rover right now, where they've had all their manufacturing plants down for, I think, what, 5 weeks at this point, and literally over 200,000 people potentially at risk of losing their jobs, which is 200,000 families without paychecks, which just, yeah, it's mind blowing at this point. So, um, I'm not sure about the referring to CompTIA SecOT Plus, but yeah, we talked about, yeah, for security analysts and in the IT world. Yeah, there just isn't any kind of equivalent in the OT world to that. So what are the key cybersecurity risk of virtual PLCs and how? So great question. Doesn't necessarily relate to what we're talking about here, but we can definitely come back and talk about that. I definitely, one of the things I always focus on ever since I got into OT cybersecurity is PLC cybersecurity, and that includes virtual PLCs these days. So, um, what is the official website to complete these certifications? If you go to isa.org, that's where you'll actually see. So ISA is the American-based entity, and then it also partners with IEC at the international level. That's why you see ISA/IEC. So ISA started all of this, and then they partner with IEC to be able to bring that to the international level. So um, yeah, so isa.org, and then you'll see you can get link to the certifications, the courses, and when they're offered. They do them online, virtually. You can do them um, I think you actually have, unless this has changed, you have to do them with a live instructor. Could be wrong. So maybe I still think they make you do them with a live instructor. And I really enjoyed the instructors I had. They're all folks that were either, engineers or like PLC technician, right? They're people that working in OT, ICS, doing the job. They're, really didn't necessarily have a cybersecurity background, but they're like pretty much everybody in the field, right? They're learning cybersecurity as they're just doing the job, you know. So, all right. Risk assessment list depends on stakeholder threshold. That's what I mentioned earlier. Yeah, depending on how you address risk, just depends on how your company looks at risk and their risk tolerance. Yeah. See, do I need Security Plus if I take 62443 Fundamental Specialist um, from LinkedIn user? So, and that just depends again on what you're trying to accomplish with the certification, right? If you're looking at trying to get your first job in OT ICS cybersecurity, then I would suggest the fundamental specialist is a great way to do that. A lot of people in the OT world, they don't know what CompTIA is. They know what 62443 is and ISA, but they don't have a clue as to what CompTIA is. So if they see Security Plus, it means absolutely nothing to them. For some it does, but for most it doesn't. So yeah, if you're trying to get your first job in OT or ICS cybersecurity, fundamental specialist is a great way to do that. So, all right. So I'll come back to questions, but so if you have other questions, definitely drop them in. Let me go ahead and let's talk about SANs real quick. I want to make sure that we cover all of those um, before. I just want to make sure we get these before time runs out. So there are three SANS ICS cybersecurity certifications. So the entry level one is the GICSP. So um, this would be kind of, I always think of, sure, you could say it's kind of entry level, like Security Plus or like the cybersecurity fundamentals from 62443. But remember, if you've ever taken a SANS course or if you've ever heard of a SANS course, right, they're 5, sometimes 6 days long, and you go from like 8 in the morning to 5 at night on a slow day, right? On a short day, and you are just learning. Just a ton of information is coming at you consistently. People always say it's like drinking from a fire hose. So the vast sheer amount of knowledge that you're getting through the lectures, right, with experienced instructors, and then also doing the hands-on labs, right, is just amazing, right? Again, and then you can weigh that against the cost. Now, the nice thing about SANS exams is you do not have to take the course to take the exam. You can just sign up for the exam, pay the exam fee, which I think is like 800 US dollars right now, somewhere around there. Don't quote me on it, and take the exam. I do know people that have passed the GICSP by they've taken my Getting Started in OT ICS Cybersecurity course on YouTube, and then they read a book called Practical Industrial Cybersecurity. One of the authors is Charles Brooks. I forget the other one at the moment. I feel bad. But it was written as a study guide for GICSP. So again, I've known more than a few people that have taken my YouTube course and they read the book and they go and they pass the exam. I would say though, still to do that, you probably have to have some background in OT ICS. Not always, but it definitely helps because the SANS exams are not easy, right? So, but that's their entry level. But again, there's just so much knowledge that's there. So, I think I took mine back in, I think 2015. So it's been about 10 years. I've been, it was 2012 when I think I stepped foot in my first project, which was a large, massive power plant. But yeah, I took that with Justin Searle in Vegas. So it could have been worse places. So um, now grid is the favorite, my favorite class I've taken ever. And it's written by Rob Lee. If you're not familiar with Rob, Rob's considered one of the world's thought leaders in ICS OT cybersecurity. He co-founded and um, uh, runs the CEO Dragos, right? Which is really the kind of the largest. I think most of us look to it as kind of the largest OT ICS cybersecurity company that's out there, focused on threat intelligence, incident response, network security monitoring, penetration testing. Um, so Rob really has a beautiful knack, I would say, about taking things that are very complicated and simplifying them. And so when you go take grid, it's like after those 5 days, you leave understanding like how to defend OT environments, and it doesn't have to be hard. That's the thing that he always stresses is that defense is doable, as he says, in OT, and it's much easier to defend OT than it is IT, believe it or not. And so I love grid. I was very fortunate to take that with Rob back in 2017, and then I got to see the update. I think 2 years ago. So when I actually was taking it in 2017, it was actually while the Trisis incident was going on. It's when the Russians had taken over the safety backup system or the SIS. at a petrochemical facility in the Middle East, and so we're getting kind of the play-by-play on what's going on behind the scenes. You can't pay for that type of experience. So, but yeah, Grid's the best class I've ever taken. Rob is phenomenal, um, and you can ask for a better teacher. Especially, I would say that when I took the class and like I was like doing all the lab when I and I pretty much I think I took a small break and then I just went and took the exam. And I think the problem, I'm sure he doesn't mind me saying this, with when you go to have Rob teach it, is he just tells all stories from everything that he's seen and done. It doesn't necessarily teach you how to take the exam, which that's really what you want when you think about it. So I always tell people if you can afford to take the grid course with Rob Lee, he only teaches it live once a year at the SANS ICS Summit in um was that June? Yeah, July. Um, do it because you can sit there with one of, if not the, world leading thought leader in OT ICS cybersecurity, and you he's the most down to earth person you would ever meet, and you can just sit there and ask him questions and he is very available to you. So it's really yeah, just it really is a great experience, and I can't again undersell that class enough. So it is worth every single penny if you have all of those pennies to be able to go. So and then GCIP, it focuses on the NERC SIP regulations. So Tim Conway wrote this. Tim's considered one of the world leading, thought leaders in, especially in not only ICS cybersecurity, but in the energy space. Right, there's very few people like Tim and Patrick Miller and a few others. Um, so he built this class for people. It's mostly for people that are auditing um, power environments. So it is kind of like an auditing course, and the exam is all about like auditing, like a power plant based off of the SIP standards. So it's like all the questions were about the different sections and the regulations and how you would audit against those. Um, so those are the three certifications that SANS has. Now, they also have there's a 613 class. I always forget the title because it has no certification. Usually refer to the classes by their certification, but it's kind of like advanced defense for OT ICS cybersecurity that mostly Jeff Shearer and a few others like Jason Dealey will teach. Um, uh, that has no certification with it right now because it's meant to be a hands-on certification. So you would actually have to go to a location and like literally rewire, PLCs, and they have like PLCs chained into PLCs and chained into PLCs. so, um, so yeah, I took that at the last SANS ICS summit and had a blast sitting there with Jeffrey and Larry. Um, but so that doesn't have a certification right now. Now they also just released the SANS ICS pen testing course, and that started this year at the SANS ICS Summit. I think that's supposed to have a certification eventually. I think they usually teach courses for a year or two before they have a certification exam, because the people that actually do the certification exams is actually technically a whole different company and entity. And so like they literally come and take the courses once they come out of beta, and then they write the exams and put those out. So oop, my girlfriend's trying to call me. Bad timing. So, so those are the three SANs. I already had GICSP and Grid before I took my master's through SAN, so that I did the GCIP for one of my electives and get the specialization in ICS cybersecurity. So I think I got an 88% on the test, so don't tell Tim. It's like one of my worst SAN scores. So, but believe it or not, those are the certifications. I did mention there's two out there. It's TUV. It's a company out of Germany. Um, there is Exida, which is another engineering company. If I remember, they're based in the US, maybe Central Europe, if not. Um, so they do have some basic certifications. Again, from what I've heard, they're very similar to 62443. So they're yeah, I hate saying it, but it's kind of light on content, especially compared to SANS. Um, SANS is like getting your master's degree, and doing the others is like taking a college course maybe for a couple of days. It's just there's really no comparison other than but again, there's also the price. So, but yeah, so that's it. There are, I would say, a few other little ones out I don't even there's one or two I don't even name because nobody knows about them, or they're from entities that nobody really gives a lot of credence to. So people usually look to certifications to either get a job or prove their credentials to clients. So they're not going to help you do either of those. So these are your options as it stands today for OT ICS cybersecurity certifications, either through SAMS or going back and looking at the 62443 series. And then don't forget, with CompTIA, with SecOT Plus coming out next year. But for now, again, I think most people really would look at starting with the 62443, the cybersecurity fundamental specialist. And that's kind of like for now, that's the closest thing you get to the OT or ICS version of Security Plus. So, all right. So let me go back to some of the questions to see. So Narendra asked, can someone with 20 years experience in OT engineering, testing, et cetera, can start this journey? Is it valuable for them given that they do not have computer science or information technology? Yeah, absolutely. So, for those of you that don't know me, like I come from an IT cybersecurity background. I've been doing IT cybersecurity for 30 plus years, but I got interested in OT and ICS in 2010 when Stuxnet came out. And then the following year, I went to work for one of the world's largest engineering companies. So I work with some of the best engineering minds in the world. So partly, my job at Floor is to help all these engineers to understand and learn OT or ICS cybersecurity. So I work with folks just like you that, yeah, some of them have literally been engineers for 40, 50 years, which is crazy, mind blowing, that how long some of these folks have men and women have been around um, doing this. But yes, definitely. I'll drop in the chat a link that I have to except I don't have it on this computer. So if you we'll do this. If you ping me on LinkedIn or if you that's probably the best thing is to ping me on LinkedIn. I'll send you a link to a post that I have with all my top resources. And one of those resources is an ebook. The ebook, there's a version for folks coming from IT, and there's one from folks like OT, like yourself, so for engineers. And it basically gives you kind of like a step-by-step guide on how to move into OT, ICS cybersecurity, right? How to learn how we do cybersecurity in ICS or control system environments. So, but yeah, definitely. So, we need people with an OT background. We need people with an IT cybersecurity background because we all have to work together to secure these environments. And we can look at Jaguar Land Rover right now, where their factories have been down for 5 weeks. And I see people that want to, argue about it's IT or it's OT. And it's like, you know what? Obviously, their teams were not working together. If they were working together, you know, maybe they got hit. Maybe they wouldn't have even got hit in the first place, but they did. But okay, if you get hit, it's just a matter of time. But the average downtime from ransomware is 7 to 10 days. They've been down for 5 weeks. They obviously had massive failures on their end, and I think a lot of that is their team members weren't talking to each other. They weren't working together. So, but again, my ideal, that's kind of what I continue working on. My engineering knowledge is, someone really needs like 10 years of engineering knowledge and 10 years of cybersecurity knowledge to really become an ideal like OT ICS cybersecurity professional. For most people, by the time you get 20 years of that knowledge and experience under your belt, you're getting ready to retire. Right. So the only way we're going to protect our OT or ICS environments is to work together. So yeah, it's great to have folks, from an engineering background that want to do more in cyber, but we also need folks with that IT cybersecurity background as well. But again, we have to be able to work together. So yeah, hopefully that answers your question. Would you recommend any other types of certifications or training if one was wanting to go into a certain sector like water or power? Yeah, this actually comes up a lot. It's a great question, Jared. The problem is there really isn't uh, any specific training for different sectors. Now that's starting to change a little bit, but like, if you go right online and you're looking for training, there's just not a lot. Like, you go to YouTube and look up like OT or ICS cybersecurity, you pretty much come up with me and that's and a few other like one-off videos that people put together, and that's it. Right. So there's just not a ton of training out there. So when you talk about then even niching down further, right, making it specific to a sector or an industry, then it's even more rare, right, to find that type of training. Now I know folks like I mentioned Patrick Miller earlier at Ampex. He focuses on like NERC SIP. So if you're in power generation, power transmission, you need to, at least in North America, you need to be NERC SIP compliant. So they have training. Maritime cybersecurity is really picking up. So I think I actually saw a course related to that. Water needs a course, right? Every sector needs a course. Probably the next course that I'm going to build that's sector specific is for manufacturing, because the vast majority of OT environments is it's manufacturing. Again, we can talk about Jaguar Land Rover, right? And see what's happening there. So so yeah. So there really isn't training or certifications around these other sectors, at least as far as OT or ICS cybersecurity, other than, like I said, power, and that's mostly like in North America because of NERC regulations. So um, thanks, Suresh. I appreciate that. So thanks for watching all the YouTube videos. So I'm glad they're easy to follow. That's what I'm aiming for. So I see a LinkedIn user posted about JLR, so we'll definitely have to read that. So thank you for sharing. Yeah, it's crazy. 50 million a week. I think it was actually a day. I mean, it's just yeah. But again, I'm not worried about somebody not buying being able to buy a Jaguar or a Land Rover, and I understand that that also impacts like sales jobs. Um, but I think of like 200,000, factory workers and those at the suppliers that are at risk of losing their jobs. That's ugh, yeah. ISA does have a Black Friday sale, so it's about that time of year. So for those of you outside of the US, Black Friday is the day after Thanksgiving, so it's like the third Thursday of November. And then that's where retailers have sales, and ISA does have sales, so they do drop the cost for the courses. So yeah, it's I'm glad you mentioned that because it's a great time if you're looking at taking the courses to definitely sign up. Yeah, for sure. So I always forget to mention that, so I'm glad I'm glad you did. So, would you wait for CompTIA SecOT Plus, or would you go for the ISA IEC, the 62443 certifications? It depends on your goals. If you're trying to move into OT ICS cybersecurity and you don't want to wait, then I would take the 62443, at least the security fundamentals exam. But again, that's and if you have those resources. So kind of makes me remember like when I took my very first SANS exam 25 years ago. I actually saved up my own money, and it was like $1,200 at the time to go. It definitely has changed a little bit. So, but yeah, it really depends on what you're trying to do. If you're not in a rush, you know what? I probably would just wait for SecOT Plus. But again, that's realistically a year down the road. So. Um, oh, yeah, that was, I guess, the could be yeah, so we're talking about CISA, which is the American, government entity that focuses on cybersecurity and IT and OT, and part critical infrastructure. Uh, yeah, CISA or CYSA plus is a certification from CompTIA. Yeah. Yeah. BVGE, thanks for coming. So the name I mentioned earlier for the book, it's actually called Practical Industrial. Hold on, here, let me go get it. I have it, I have it right here. It's a nice thing about doing this from home. So it's actually Practical Industrial Cybersecurity. And you can see, and then it also says ICS Industrial 4.0 and IIoT. And then you can see it's by Charles Brooks and Philip Craig Jr. I always remember Charles, but I always forget Philip. Sorry, Philip. But Practical Industrial Cybersecurity. I think it's like $50 on Amazon, at least for US. So, but again, it was really written as a study guide for GICSP. So yeah, definitely something to consider. So, would you recommend doing the SANS graduate certificate in ICS? You get 4 certifications for around 23,000. Would that be considered a better lever to get a job and knowledge than ISA series? Yeah, actually. So, if it's another one, if you have the money, if you have the resources, and the great thing about the certification, the certificates, the graduate certificates, or like the degrees, like I got my master's through SANS, is you basically get the courses for half off. So it's still expensive, but at least it's half off basically. Um, and so when people are hiring managers in the OT ICS cybersecurity world, if they are looking for certifications, number one certification is of choice is going to be grid. If you don't have the grid, they're going to be looking for GICSP, right? And those are like on a high pedestal. And then you have ISA 62443 down here. So they're still better than nothing, but I think people realize the amount of knowledge in the SANS courses compared to 62443 is it's just very significant. Like I said, I've taken all of them, um, and in one day in SANS, I mean that's as much knowledge you get as probably all 4 of the 62443 course. That's nothing against the 62443 folks, right? It just those classes are much lighter, and they're just not as in depth as the SANS courses. So they do a good job, right? And they have a place. So thanks Dylan for yeah, adding the link. Yep, that's the one. So could you kindly recommend any practical hands-on courses that enable the implementation of OT security in alignment with recognized industry standards like 62443? If there was one, I would recommend it. So I shouldn't laugh, right? It's bad. But that's where we're at today. I will say, so I do have my getting started in OT ICS cybersecurity course on YouTube that also has a lab manual and review questions with that. I'm actually working on a new version of that that'll probably start dropping either later this year or early next year. I also have my OT ICS penetration testing uh, course. That's actually this Thursday and Friday. If anybody wants to come, if you go to mikeholcomb.com, you can find the schedule there and you can sign up there. Or if it's pay what you can, so if you want to come for free, you just send me an email at mike@mikeholcomb.com. You don't need to tell me why. I'll just add you to the class. And so I have a ton of hands-on uh, labs that go with that. So mostly like simulated control system environments that I've created with ChatGPT. I'm not I'm not a developer, right? But I can use ChatGPT as good as anybody, and I actually really have a lot of fun with some of the labs that have come up. In fact, I was doing some last minute changes for one um, for like it has like this. ICS environment where there's like a pressure in a tank is building and then alarms start going off and you have to respond to those. So yeah. So definitely check those out. Again, and then yeah, I mean Sands is very hands-on. Um, again, very expensive. You can take my courses for free. So um but yeah. And there is some hands-on to the ISA, IEC 62443 courses. Like they give you, you're able to log in to, they have a bunch of real world like PLCs and OT specific firewalls. I think they use like the M guards. So they have those set so you can connect in, you can remote into the environment and you get some hands-on, which actually is one of the best things about that course. Yeah, or courses. So, yeah. Can't afford SANS without scholarship. What other certs would you place in the right place? Yeah, I mean, this is it, right? It's SANS or for right now, the 62443 series. So SANS definitely is going to be, out of reach from a budget perspective, which it is for most people, I'm like, I wanted to go take a SANS course this year, and I couldn't, do it within my normal budget, type of thing. I mean, it's just crazy. So, so yeah, 62443 is the other option. Again, CompTIA SecOT Plus will be out next year. So that would be definitely one to also look at. That's only a couple $100. So, um, yeah, no one should spend 10K out of pocket. Yeah, I would never suggest anybody go to Sands on their own dime. When again, I did it 25 years ago when it was $1,200, which was a lot of money, even today, right? Um, but yeah, I always suggest go to work for like I work for a very supportive, great company that pays for me to be able to go to these courses. So yeah, so I'm very fortunate. Yeah. Claudia asks, "Hi, Claudia. What about the CYSA Plus from CompTIA? That's a IT, kind of SOC analyst course and certification. Doesn't really apply in the OT ICS world. Really, we just unfortunately don't have a lot of SOCs and do a lot of network security monitoring in OT. We should, but most OT environments can't afford that, unfortunately. So it doesn't really translate into the OT world. So, and yeah, I've definitely heard of ICS for ICS. I think they're going through some transitions now, so don't kind of talk about them as much. Um, but yeah, I need to follow up with those folks and see what they're doing these days. So, um, oh, besides New York City, I know besides IT version of besides will be on the 18th. Oh, very cool. So that's almost here. So yeah, have fun. So Simon asked, how about supporting processes like incident change, asset management, or config management? Are they any repositories or sources that not ITIL that could support an organization when it comes to implementing cybersecurity for OT or ICS, you're really looking at 62443 at the international level. Um, you can look at NIST 882 in the US. Now, when you get um, in a little bit more details into things like change control, going authorized change management processes, there are other standards that will guide you for those in the OT world. Yeah, ITIL though, remember, ITIL is for IT. And while you could apply that to OT, there is like kind of a lot of OT organizations aren't going to want to think or look at anything from the IT world. I hate to say it, but that's just true. So, Sabine says, I can see recruiters offering less salary even though there are rare skills present. Yeah, that's one thing that comes up these days is there's still a definitely salary or compensation gap between IT and OT. If you were, let's say, had the equivalent role in IT and OT cybersecurity, you're going to make more money in IT than in OT. I hate to say it. For now, that's not the case for every company. Like the larger OT shops, like if you go like oil and gas, they understand and pay their people really well. Most don't. Most more money goes to IT. That's changing, but it'll probably be a couple years before those kind of equal out. So yeah, for people that are just wanting a job for money, OT is not going to be more than likely the place that you're going to want to be. Most people are in OT or ICS because of the mission in ensuring, especially like protecting critical infrastructure and making sure that our families have power and clean water and food on the table. It's not about, there's nothing wrong about wanting to get paid. It's just, yeah, unfortunately, salaries and compensation in the OT world is less, sometimes 25, 30% less in in OT. So yeah. How to set up a practice lab while preparing for a certification. That depends on the certification, right? If you go take the SANS course, they give you all the lab stuff. That's the other nice thing about SANS, right? You get a PLC, you get like the whole setup, and it's all connected. Like the grid course simulates a power grid with a PLC. Um, with the advanced like defense course, you get a PLC, you have a little HMI, um, and a few other things that go with that. So if you're doing SANS, they give you everything for their practice lab. 62443, again, they'll allow you to remote into their labs because they purchase that physical hardware. So otherwise, if you want to practice, you would have to really purchase that hardware for that. I would say, though, you don't have to do the labs to pass the 62443 exams. So they might not like want me to say that or like me saying that, but doing those exams, it helps you understand how these things work in the real world. I don't think it really helps you necessarily pass the exam. So hopefully that helps. And again, I have a lot of labs that go with my courses as well. So if you definitely check those out. And I'm starting to actually be a good YouTuber and add the links to the materials in the labs in the comments, so you have access to those. So we're just winding down. I know we're already over, so folks are still hanging out. I appreciate it. I'll just go a couple more questions, but then also, feel free to reach out, ping me on LinkedIn, especially. I'm pretty much always there, so feel free to ping me there. But so if I have options of either GCIP or ISA specialist, which should I go for in terms of quick job prospects? So not the GCIP. Let me go ahead and switch back to that SANS. So GCIP is specific to power generation and transmission in North America. Um, that's a very limited space, right? So that's for people that are going to audit power plants, essentially, right? And you're thinking the GICSP. So if you're just talking about what's going to help you get a job faster, the GICSP is going to help you get a job that much faster. It is definitely recognized. Like I said, grid number one, GICSP number two, and then ISA is kind of down here. So, but yeah, so grid you can't just go to though without like having the prior knowledge like from GICSP though. So hopefully that helps. Yeah, Matthew's right. Yeah, we mentioned sand's definitely it's you're drinking from the fire hose all day long. That is not the 62443 courses. Again, nothing against them. They're good courses for what they are. It's just it's light on content, right? To when you compare them. So and then it says, I'm in a rush because I pursue my master's in electrical. Very cool. In Sydney. And I want to complete certifications before starting course. So I would say, yeah, your best thing is probably just doing the 62443 series. Then yeah, yeah, I would go with those. Yeah, you probably even just don't have a ton of time to even really dig into sand stuff, really. So, but if you have those resources, great. But I would just look at 62443, and that sets you really up for when you're getting your electrical engineering degree. Um, yeah, next year. So good luck with school. Yeah, very cool. So, Chair says I'm currently in wastewater and making educational pamphlets, posters, and OTICS and water sector. Oh, very cool. So, would there be a subject you'd like to see made talk for? There's, oh, yeah, that's a good question. Honestly, the biggest problem in the water sector is the lack of awareness on the owners and operators that they need to do something about cybersecurity. And to be the one to say it, but I've been in rooms with 500 owners and operators of water in water and wastewater, and out of those 500 people, like one actually cared. And it just blows my mind. I think that's changing a little bit, but I mean, and this was just a year ago. And this was after all the Unitronics water hacks. So you think, they would, pay more attention, but they didn't. And I get it. There's not a lot of money in water, right? And they don't have a lot of resources. So it's really how do you get leadership to pay attention so you can talk about existing attacks like the Unitronics attacks by cyber avengers, right? You can, try to elevate that awareness for them. Um, and then others, talk to like basics of cybersecurity in OT. Secure passwords, not falling for phishing attack, even though, right, those are more IT, but that's a lot you see in water and OT. Yeah. But it's really trying to get leadership involved more. Yeah. Help them understand water is being targeted, is being attacked. There were 160 people in Ireland that lost water for 2 days because of the cyber avengers. Not a super huge impact. It's an impact though. So yeah. Yeah, Joe says, yeah, Sam's is awesome, but don't pay it for it on your own. Yeah, because that's a lot. Yeah, we mentioned, yeah, SecOT OT Plus is going to be, I think it's great entry level certificate. It's going to be the OT version of Security Plus. It just doesn't come out until, again, earliest is probably June, July next year in beta format. So yeah, Security Plus is great, but our Security Plus focuses on IT cybersecurity. Now, I would say so it doesn't for people in the OT ICS world, it doesn't translate. So I would say though, what people in OT and ICS forget about is that, or they just don't know that IT and OT cybersecurity have more in common than they don't. So it's great that you have, if you get Security Plus, the problem is then it's like you have to know how IT and OT cybersecurity are the same, where they're similar, and then where they're different. Because when they are different, they are very different. So things like vulnerability management in OT works very differently. And if you can't just go into a plant and just patch systems and reboot them without potentially, you know, getting somebody hurt or somebody killed. So, so yeah. So, let me take one or two more, and then we'll wrap up. Again, I appreciate everybody for hanging in. So, what are the different certifications for OT risk assessment apart from ISA 6443 risk assessment one? That's it. unless anybody knows of any other ones out there. So I did mention, I think like the Tuve and Exida companies that um, one of them might have something around risk assessment, maybe, but yeah, I mean that's it. So again, there's really not a lot of options in the OT ICS world. So uh, Dole mentions it's strange because in OT you need double the experience, knowledge, and even money to earn, but the salaries don't reflect that. It's unfortunately, yeah, it's sad, but true. Yeah, for folks. And again, I know some great people that want to do OT cybersecurity, but they're like, hey man, I got to feed my family. I'm like, I completely get that. And I've seen good people doing OT cybersecurity leave to go do IT cyber because they can make more money. Yeah, which is really, again, that's changing, but it's still going to be probably a couple years before they're really on par. So, let's see. Bragger says, I have a chance to develop my skills in the private sector. What cert would you recommend? Uh, if you're looking at OT ICS cybersecurity, there's not a ton of detail there. I'd say, um, I would always, shift everybody. Probably the most best place to start is the cybersecurity fundamentals from 62443 to from ISA. So that's kind of, again, it's kind of the security plus. So it's a great place to start. If you can afford it, you got the resources to go to SAMS, knock yourself out. But again, most people don't have those resources. So cybersecurity fundamentals from 62443 from ISA is the great way to go. So, and then Greg asked comments on rail transport sector. I love rail. I have a lot of great time in rail. I have a couple rail environments that I work with. Some large ones. Yeah, uh, it's like any sector in OT ICS. They all need a lot of help. Unfortunately, they're all uh, every OT ICS sector. Unfortunately, is behind where they need to be. There and many some are really starting to work on it. There's very few that take it very seriously and are really working hard at it. And then so many of the environments out there, they're just still not doing anything, or they're just doing very, very little. They're trying, I guess, and I can't complain about them trying, but most environments aren't, they're barely doing the bare minimum. I hate to say it. So, but all right. Well, again, I appreciate everybody for coming. Thanks for watching. And if you're on YouTube, definitely like the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't. But otherwise, I'll see everybody next Tuesday at noon. We'll make it a weekly thing. So, all right. Thanks, everybody. I'll see you later. Take care.